A recipe for recession? The economy shrank in March as prices rose and people started to cut back on spending.
The policies that we put in place will help people, and I think it's not right to say that we're not doing anything when actually there's a significant amount of...
weren't doing enough.
Well, there's a significant amount of support in place to help people with the price rises that they are seeing.
The Chancellor didn't, though, rule out a windfall tax on energy companies. We'll have the latest. Also ahead, new Partygate fines. 50 more are issued, bringing the total so far to more than 100.
Are you shocked at the scale of law-breaking in Number 10, Prime Minister? How could you let that happen under your watch?
Sure, we'll be having plenty to say about that when the thing's finished.
The man who murdered Millie Dowler wants to get married in jail. And why the big tennis stars could stay away from this year's Wimbledon.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hussain.
Good afternoon. The price rises that are hitting family budgets are now hitting the UK's economy. It shrank last month as soaring bills and inflation led to people spending less. The economy did grow by 0.8% in the first 3 months of the year, but many are concerned that unless something changes, that'll be the only growth this year. So what help did the Chancellor promise this morning? Well, he didn't rule out a windfall tax on energy companies. Here's our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
Tammy Sloan and her family live in Stoke.
Good morning, ladies. Can I have a cup of tea and some toast, please?
She's a full-time carer for her husband, and her teenage son is autistic. She works, but can't commit to doing so full-time because of her caring requirements. The cost of living crisis is hitting her family hard, and they're having to use this food bag just to get by.
It can feel quite degrading to have to feel like you need to come to a place like this in the first place. It's quite a mental challenge to think, I can't provide for my family. I definitely want the Chancellor to do more, and I challenge Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson to come and live a day in Stoke-on-Trent on our budgets with the local community.
Latest data suggests the country's economic situation is only going to get more difficult. The economy grew 0.8% in the first 3 months of the year, but that momentum has since disappeared. After a strong January, growth in February has been revised down to 0, while in March, the economy shrank by 0.1%. The Bank of England is now predicting a severe downturn ahead. Today, the government held their cabinet meeting in Staffordshire, knowing that those economic figures are likely to impact those who are struggling with the cost of living already. They're discussing potential plans, but the Chancellor was adamant that he's already doing a lot.
I know these are difficult times for families and businesses up and down the country, and that's why we've announced quite a significant amount of support already. The policies that we've put in place will help people, and I think it's not right to say that we're not doing anything when actually...
Did you say you weren't doing anything? I said you weren't doing enough.
Well, there's a significant amount of support in place to help people with the price rises that they are seeing. Now, the biggest driver of future price rises will be what happens with the energy price cap in the autumn.
Labour say enough isn't being done, and taxing energy companies, which the government is now not ruling out, is a must.
This is a crisis facing every family and business across this country. We need to get money back into people's pockets, and the windfall tax on big oil and gas producers who've made record profits that would cut hundreds off people's energy bills is not just a no-brainer, but it has to be a national priority.
For those around the country who are already finding things tough, the idea it could get worse will be nothing short of daunting. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
And our economics editor, Joel Hills, who you saw in that report, is here. Having spoken to the Chancellor this morning, what do you think he might do next?
Well, in February and March, Nina, obviously the government announced considerable support, £22 billion of it in the form of national insurance, raising the threshold and other things that we've reported on. The problem the Chancellor's got is the outlook has darkened so much more since then. He did talk about a windfall tax. The PM and the Chancellor are hinting that the cavalry might be coming. There might still be more support. There's no sign of it, though. The Chancellor's position on taxing the profits of the likes of BP and Shell seems identical to where it was 2 weeks ago when he told Mumsnet that it was something he'd look at unless energy producers could demonstrate their investing in the UK. There have been calls for increasing universal credit. The Chancellor wouldn't go near that today. In fact, he was talking really of the limitations of what fiscal policy, of what he could actually do. And it's true that he cannot write, no Chancellor can, a blank cheque. There is, unfortunately, as a result of the war, it's intensified the squeeze on living standards here. We're going to face a period in which we are poorer, and there's a limit to what he can do about that. I think the issue is that although he's done a lot, there is a concern that those on the lowest incomes will have a really miserable few months ahead, because you've got a situation where inflation is high and rising, and growth, as Shihab was pointing out there, has almost completely disappeared. The months ahead look pretty awful.
Joel Hills, thank you very much. Thank you. The police have issued 50 more fines over Partygate, bringing the total to more than 100 so far. When asked about the extent of law-breaking in Downing Street this morning, the Prime Minister responded saying he was sure we'll have plenty to say about that when the thing's finished. It's not finished yet. The police investigation is continuing. Our UK editor Paul Brand is in Downing Street. More fines, more pressure on the Prime Minister, Paul.
Yeah, Nina, Downing Street has scored a century, and yet Boris Johnson's still not out. Astonishing, really, when you think about it. More than 100 fines issued here for breaking the rules that they were making. In fact, it probably makes Downing Street the most fined place now in the United Kingdom. And we know this latest batch of fines relates to at least 2 events. The Bring Your Own Booze event in the garden of Downing Street, which we revealed on ITV News earlier this year, and also that Christmas party, which was revealed by staff laughing and joking about it on that leaked video that blew the whole Partygate scandal wide open. Now, we know Boris Johnson wasn't at that Christmas party, and we're told today that he has not yet received a further fine to the one he got for the birthday party last month. Neither has his wife, Carrie Johnson, but the questions for him just keep coming.
Are you shocked at the scale of law-breaking in number 10, Prime Minister? How could you let that happen under your watch?
Sure, we're having plenty to say about that when the thing's finished.
But of course, it's not just him being asked about rule breaking, but the Labour leader too, Keir Starmer, who's under investigation by Durham police for that curry and beer that he had whilst campaigning last year. He has said that he will resign if he gets a fine. Well, Boris Johnson has had a fine. He may get further fines. The investigation is still ongoing, but no sign yet of the Prime Minister volunteering to go.
Paul Brand, thank you. The President and Prime Minister of Finland have agreed the country must join NATO without delay. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has triggered the decision, but Russia has responded, saying it sees the move as a threat and the expansion of NATO will not make Europe or the world more stable. Faye Barker has the details.
Finland shares a border with Russia of more than 800 miles, but the Russian invasion in Ukraine has increased nerves here, and now Finland's president and prime minister say the country should join NATO without delay. In a joint statement, they said NATO membership would strengthen Finland's security. Finland must apply for NATO membership without delay. We hope that the national steps still needed to make this decision will be taken rapidly within the next few days. Finland's foreign minister too laid out the benefits, speaking to the European Parliament today.
The accession of Finland would strengthen the security and stability of the Baltic Sea region and Northern Europe. Finland is a regional security provider and would further strengthen NATO as a future ally. From NATO's perspective, Finland holds solid democratic credentials that meet NATO's membership criteria and has a strong and credible national defence.
Russia says Finland's move to join NATO won't help stability and security in Europe and has previously warned of political and military repercussions. In the years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the countries in NATO expanded eastwards. After Russia invaded Ukraine, support for membership of the alliance grew in Sweden and especially in Finland, which shares a border with Russia. In Finland's capital Helsinki, there's wide support for joining NATO.
Where Finland is, it's important.
It brings us safety and power against military operations.
But I think that now is the best time to join NATO.
For the country, but also for the people and for my children.
Just yesterday, Boris Johnson signed a mutual defence pact with both Finland and Sweden, which is also expected to push for its NATO membership within days. Faye Barker, ITV News.
More people across England are waiting to start routine hospital treatment than ever before, a total of 6.4 million people. Close to 17,000 people are waiting more than 2 years for treatment. That's actually a drop of more than 6,000 from February. Ambulances, on average, are now taking just over 51 minutes to respond to calls like strokes and epilepsy. That's down from an hour. And life-threatening calls are now taking just over 9 minutes for a response. These are still way off targets. For reaction, I'm joined by Pat Cullen from the Royal College of Nursing. Signs of small improvements in those figures, but the big figure, the record number, is really high, which means lots of people simply waiting to get on with their lives.
Absolutely. And today is International Nurses Day, when we're out celebrating the very best of nursing. But the very best of nursing needs nurses. And with thousands of vacancies, is it any wonder we see the waiting lists that we've got? And behind every one of those figures, there's a patient waiting in agony for treatment. And we can't run health services. How many times do we have to say this? We can't run a health service without nurses. So the government needs to do more. They need to step up. They need to fill those nursing vacant posts. And they need to invest in nursing, because when you invest in nursing, you invest in patients.
What impact on the nurses who are working right now, who are either seeing patients coming in later than they should have been to A&E, or people who are waiting for those routine operations? And if you've been waiting for more than 2 years, that will have presumably had an impact on your health.
Well, it's those frontline nurses that are dealing with the impact every minute of the day. And last night we had a celebration of nursing at Westminster Abbey for the birthday of Florence Nightingale. And one young nurse approached me and said, it's not just now the anxiety when we start a shift. It's the anxiety when we're trying to finish a shift, because we know we're leaving our care unfinished. We're walking away from those patients and wondering about the care that's been left undone. Are we going to have staff that are able to come in behind us, that are going to fill those shifts that we're about to start? And the anxiety, the pressure and the stress. Is it any wonder that we're seeing the brilliant nurses that are joining our profession leaving very shortly thereafter? And this can't continue. People need to start listening in leadership positions and to start to take nursing seriously and to start investing in nurses.
So some investment will come from the rise in national insurance, which started last month. Are you confident that that will help to alleviate some of what you're talking about?
Yes, but don't forget, it's nurses that are paying towards that national insurance increase. That's seeing an impact in their wage every month as well. Those nurses that are struggling with low pay, they are paying towards that also, but they're certainly not seeing an impact in terms of the numbers coming through. There needs to be real investment. Government needs to make investment. They need to start taking this seriously. Otherwise, are we going to sit here next month and see another 7% increase in our waiting lists? It's just not acceptable for patients, and it's not acceptable for nurses.
On the issue of patients, what is your advice if you are dealing with somebody who's getting symptoms of a stroke, or you are getting symptoms of a stroke? We know what they are. You call an ambulance and you're told it's nearly an hour away. What should you do?
Well, what choice do those patients have but to wait on that ambulance? They have no choice but to wait. They have to wait, but they need to make the calls. They need to get to those services as quickly as possible. We know that time is of the essence when people are...
So should you be driving yourself to hospital, getting your neighbour to drive you?
It's not always possible, and sometimes there are risks associated with that. That's why we have emergency services in place who are doing their very, very best, but they need enhanced, they need increased, and they need investment. Pat Cullen, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
Rebecca Vardy was accused of lying today when being questioned by Colleen Rooney's barrister in the High Court. It's day 3 of the libel case Vardy has brought against her former friend and fellow footballer's wife. Rooney's barrister accused Rebecca Vardy of repeatedly revising witness statements ahead of the trial relating to a photo of the so-called wags at the World Cup in Russia in 2018, something she denied. Martha Fairley is at the High Court. Martha, take us through today's proceedings, please.
Yes, well, Rebecca Vardy is in the witness box for a third day today to give evidence. Under cross-examination by David Sherborne, she was asked about a story that had appeared in The Sun about Colleen Rooney crashing her car. Colleen had posted a picture on her Instagram stories captioned "RIP Honda," showing damage to the side of her car. And a day later, Rebecca Vardy's agent Caroline Watt messaged her on WhatsApp saying, "I would have tried to do a story on Colleen, but the evidence has been deleted." Vardy wonder why she deleted it. Caroline Watt speculates for insurance purposes and then asks details about the picture. What was it? Vardy replied, "A picture of the side of the car knackered." "Can you remember what the caption was?" she's asked. "It was something like goodbye half a Honda." Now, David Sherborne suggested to Rebecca Vardy that she and Caroline Watt were quite a team, that they worked hand in glove and that she knew Ms Watt was passing on information to The Sun. But Vardy said she was just passing on information that was already out there in the public. Earlier, the court had heard about messages between Vardy and her agent setting up a paparazzi photo outside a hotel in St Petersburg during the World Cup in 2018. But Rebecca Vardy said she was shocked when 2 photographers appeared at a restaurant where the wives and girlfriends were eating as they popped out for a private group photo. She was worried it would look like she staged it. David Sherborne said that she had changed her statements on this several times and said, "The reason you can't get your story straight is because you are lying." Vardy replied, "No, I am absolutely not lying."
Martha Fairley, thank you very much. And for all the updates on this ongoing case, just go to our website, itv.com/news. Next, the serial killer Levi Bellfield, who murdered Millie Dowler, has become engaged to a prison visitor. Bellfield now plans to marry the woman in jail. The government says it's begun an urgent review to see if it can stop the wedding going ahead. Charlie Frost joins me now. Charlie, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, yes, the Ministry of Justice has confirmed that Levi Bellfield has applied to marry in prison, something that he would need permission from the governor of Frankland Prison in Durham to do, because that is where he is currently serving 2 whole life sentences. The first given to him after he was convicted of murdering 19-year-old Marcia McDonnell and 22-year-old Amélie Delagrange 14 years ago. Then later, when he was in prison, he was given the second after he was found guilty of murdering 13-year-old Millie Dowler. Now, under the Human Rights Act, he does have the right to apply to be married, but the Prisons Minister, Victoria Atkins, has ordered an urgent review into whether the government can stop this marriage going ahead, with the Prime Minister's spokesperson saying this lunchtime that Boris Johnson is sickened and appalled by it. But at the moment, as I said earlier, it is currently up to the governor of that prison whether or not this marriage can go ahead.
Charlie Frost, many thanks. Thank you. Could Wimbledon look a lot different this summer with some big names staying away? It's over the tournament's decision to ban players from Russia and Belarus this year. Martin Stew is at Wimbledon. What are both sides saying, Martin?
Well, Nina, it is one of the quintessential sights this summer, isn't it? Professional players in their whites battling it out on the grass courts. But all that is looking increasingly at risk because of the decision made in this country to ban Russian and Belarusian players, including the world number 2 on the men's side, Daniil Medvedev, and the world number 8 on the women's side, Arina Sabalenka, from playing in tournaments in this country. Elsewhere in the world, they're allowed to play, but just not under their home nationality's flag. Now here, that population polls pretty well. People think it's a good idea, but there is growing anger amongst professional players, including Novak Djokovic, who has been very critical. And discussions are going on now amongst both the men's and women's tours as to how to punish the UK for taking this stance. And one thing which they're considering is stripping the tournaments over the summer of their ranking points. That would mean Wimbledon, for the first time in the Open era, would essentially become a show tournament. Now, there's enough prestige and money that you'd expect the big players still to come here, but all those warm-up tournaments, think about them, Queen's, Nottingham, Eastbourne, they may really struggle if there aren't ranking points available to attract players to come and play in the UK, which could put the grass court season at risk. We understand discussions are going on behind closed doors as we speak, and we expect a decision in the next couple of days.
Martin Stew, thank you. Ted Hankey, the two-time world darts champion, has been jailed for 2 years for a sexual assault on a young woman, which was caught on camera. The 54-year-old father of 3, seen here on the right carrying the bag, attacked the woman in Crewe last September. The judge said Hankey had shown an arrogant entitlement and thought no one would believe his victim. And there have been calls for compensation after backlogs at the passport office have left people facing 9-hour waits on the phone and forced them to miss key family events. The Home Office says extra staff will be hired by the summer to help. The Italian city of Turin is the home to this year's Eurovision Song Contest. Excited fans have started to arrive ahead of Saturday's final. The second semi-final is tonight. For the favourites Ukraine, it could be, though, a night of mixed emotion. Hannah Miller is in Turin and sent this.
Well, I certainly can't complain. This city feels so excited to be hosting this year's Eurovision, with the second semi-final taking place tonight ahead of Saturday's big show. The Ukrainian entry, Kalush Orchestra, are the hot favourites to win. They're a band that mixes rap and hip-hop with traditional Ukrainian folk music. And in the last hour or so, we were actually lucky enough to be able to speak to them. They want to send the message that Ukrainian culture is alive and well, despite everything that is going on back at home. It's clear that they feel a real responsibility to represent their country well, but they also told me that it isn't really possible for them to enjoy everything that's going on here when they're so worried about their friends and family. For most people who come here over the next few days, it will of course be a much more positive, festive atmosphere. But it's very clear that this year's Eurovision is being seen through a different lens to normal.
Yep, indeed. Hannah Miller in Turin there, and Hannah's interview that she was talking about will be going on tonight, ITV Evening News with Charlene at 6:30. From everyone here for now, bye-bye.